Hello everyone, and in theory, welcome back to the Bibliotek. If you've watched any of my videos before, you will know that usually I broadcast from the Netherworld Bibliotek. Unfortunately, this time, due to some unplanned construction work, shall we say, we're now just going to have to use your imagination and pretend that I am in the non-fiction section of the Netherworld Bibliotek to talk to you about our latest acquisition, which is Syria's Secret Library by Mike Thompson. This book is published by Weidenfeld and Nicholson, and the cover art is by Steve Marking and Orion Books, and I will leave information about all of that in the description section. So this is a book about a communal library built by the citizens of Daraya, which is a town in Syria which has been besieged since 2012 as part of the Syrian civil war. So before I go any further, I just want to stress that this video is a book review, so I'm just going to be giving you a summary of what this book is about to help you decide if you would like to read it or purchase it for yourself. This is not a political video. I'm not going to go into a detailed history of the Syrian civil war, and I'm also not going to be giving any of my political views. So in this video, I'm first just going to give you a bit of background for the city of Daraya. I'm then going to talk about the library, so by the end of this book you will know the fate of the secret library, and I'm going to tell you a bit about what the library has meant to the people of Daraya. So there will be a few spoilers, a few mini spoilers, but I'm also going to leave out really personal stories of the people of this town, because if you're interested, I want you to read the book for yourself. I want you to have something to read for yourself. So lastly, before I get started, the main town is called Daraya. That's how I'm pronouncing it. I have only seen it written. I've never heard it pronounced before. If I am mispronouncing it, please let me know. I mean, especially if you are from Syria and you speak Arabic, I definitely want to know if I'm pronouncing the name of the town correctly. Alright, let's get started. Daraya is a town near Damascus, and it's famous for a few things. So, about 2,000 years ago, it was said to be the site of Paul the Apostle's conversion to Christianity, so it is a historically significant town for Christians. It also has a really famous agricultural area, and there's a particular grape. It's a white grape which is said to be very sweet, which flourishes in and around Daraya, but it is very difficult to grow this grape in other parts of the world. And also in 2011, Daraya was said to have about 90,000 residents. It used to be quite a busy city. It had cafes, it had restaurants, it had internet cafes. There were also a couple of particularly popular places, such as Champions Cafe, which was a very popular place for people to watch football games, and by football I mean soccer. And Daraya was also famous for its non-violent protests. So for instance, in 1998 there was a Muslim cleric and some of his students which were kicked out of a mosque because they were having meetings that were too progressive. Their interpretation of the Quran was too progressive, and so they were kicked out of the mosque, and they just continued having their meeting outside. They continued having their meetings outside, encouraging discussion and critical thinking. And later on this grew to be the youth group of Daraya, who thought that reading and education was fundamental to progressing society. So this gives you a bit of an idea of the type of city or type of town that Daraya was. Alright, so now we're going to jump forward to 2012, when the town was besieged by pro-government forces. So during this time, a number of people evacuated. Some people stayed, some people were soldiers. They were part of the Free Syrian Army and they actively fought against the government forces. Other people were civilians, but they didn't think that the fighting would get that bad. They thought, oh, the government is just flexing its muscles, so to speak, but things will get back to normal soon. So there were some people who ended up being trapped because they just never thought that it would escalate to this stage. So it's estimated that when the town was besieged, there were still 8,000 people that stayed or remained for whatever reason. Some of them were soldiers, but some of them were civilians, some were, you know, children, elderly people. It was a real mixed bag. And the author, Mike Thompson, he was speaking to one man about this and saying, you know, why didn't you leave? Like, surely there must have come a time when you realized, hey, it's getting really dangerous, we better get out of here. And he said, no, because this town isn't just the infrastructure. This town is the people. And if everyone just packs up and leaves, then truly the town will be gone. And he illustrated this by talking about the farmers in particular. And the farmers were especially being targeted by government forces because the government was trying to starve the people into submission. So the farmers would be targeted, they would be shot by snipers, they would be bombed. Some died, some were maimed by, you know, shrapnel, and still the farmers remained, even with grievous wounds. Even when some of them became amputees, they still stayed and they still farmed the land to produce food for their fellow townspeople. That is this sort of spirit of kinship that existed in this town. So some of the people who remained were university students, and they had been unable to complete their studies, and they thought things would go back to normal in a few months. But when they realized, no, things are not going to go back to normal anytime soon, they thought, what can we do for the benefit of the town? Besides fighting, what can we do for the benefit of the town? So they started brainstorming, and they thought about maybe holding some language lessons, because that way they thought if people could learn other languages, they could communicate with the outside world. They also thought about maybe having some kind of forums or public discussions about a range of topics. But all of them, or most of them, being university people, they really valued education, and they understood how informative and how precious books can be. And so they thought, you know what, we should set up some kind of bookshop. We should rescue as many books as we can from the city and sell them to whoever wants them. So they then went on these really dangerous missions, going to all kinds of buildings, public buildings, private buildings. They found a number of private libraries, because there are a number of books which are banned under the Syrian government. So there are a lot of banned books that people had secretly in their houses, and this group went around collecting the books, and they had intended to sell them, but then they thought, you know what, this isn't really right, it's not our property, and maybe the owners will come back one day and want their books back. So then they thought, why don't we set up a library? So they gave each book a barcode number or an identifying number, and they wrote down the address of where they got the books from, so that when this was all over, they could return everything back to their rightful owners. So at first they were just collecting any and every book that they could find, and they found a wide range of things. They found encyclopedias, they found religious texts, they found Agatha Christie's The Body in the Library, they found Pablo Coelho's The Alchemist, yeah, just a range of things. And they said, you know what, we're not going to ban anything, because if we ban something, even if we don't agree with it, that will just raise ignorance. And there's enough stuff that is banned under our government as it is. We don't want to just do more of the same. We want critical thinking, we want discussion, all books are welcome. However, they did especially treasure books about how people across the world overcame trauma, because that was becoming increasingly relevant for the people of Daraya. So the secret library officially opened its doors in May of 2014. And it was located in the basement of a bombed out building, because that was thought to be a secure location. However, not everyone could reach it. Some people who lived too far away couldn't travel to it. It was an active war zone, so the longer that you're outside traveling, the longer that you are a target. So not everyone in Daraya was able to visit the library. And also not everyone was told where it was for safety reasons, because if everyone knew, there would be more and more chance that maybe the government would find out. And this library was a source of hope for the people of Daraya, but also it had a number of banned books, so it would be unlikely that the government would leave it untouched. But anyway, the library opened its doors. People were welcome to come and borrow books. Over time there were a number of lectures held there. It was also used as a meeting point, as a tea room, and it helped the university students continue their studies, but it also helped people escape, because you're in a war zone. There were a number of people who said that when they went there or when they read something, they were able to think about something else and, you know, escape into a different world and have a little bit of peace. So now I'm just going to give you a few examples of what the library meant to some different people. So firstly, there was one dental student who stayed, and similar to the farmers, he said, no, I have to stay, especially because all of the actual dentists have left. So if I leave too, there will be no one to provide any dental services, and even though I'm not, you know, a qualified dentist yet, it's better than nothing. So he remained. He had tried to buy dental equipment from the dentists who had left Daraya, but most of them did not leave their equipment behind. He did find one dentist and he was able to buy the equipment from this dentist. Unfortunately, a lot of the equipment was either very old or damaged, and of course there were no anesthetics or anything like that. So unfortunately, he did not have the best tools, but he did have access to the secret library. And so he borrowed whatever books he could about medicine in general, just trying to improve his knowledge so that he could do the best that he could to help his townspeople. Similarly, there were some ladies in town who decided to start a school because there were still children left in Daraya, and one of the ladies noticed that the children were, you know, outside playing, and she thought, you know what, they're sitting ducks. It would be safer if we got them indoors, and, you know, maybe at least, you know, learning something, maybe at least, you know, trying to distract them from what's going on. So yeah, the library was very helpful in terms of finding some textbooks and finding some resources for the children. Unfortunately, one of the ladies said that the children were so malnourished. By this point, most people were subsisting on a really watery vegetable soup just once a day. And so there was a class where she was trying to show the kids some nutritional textbooks, and she had to cut out pictures of food because she said, you know, these children are starving. I can't show them these photos of this delicious looking food. It wouldn't be good for their mental health. So that sort of gives you some insight into the situation. Also, a number of soldiers read, and contrary to popular belief, war is not always active fighting. A lot of war is sitting around. And so there were quite a few soldiers who had books with them, and during quiet times would exchange books and would even have like a bit of a book club going on. Although normally in a traditional book club, everyone has read the same book and everyone discusses it. This was a little bit different, where everyone just had whatever book they had read, and everyone just took a turn talking about the book they had read and what their thoughts on it were. So overall, there was a good response. Although some people in Daraya didn't see the point of the library. There were some soldiers that said, you know, what are you doing? We're on the front lines fighting. What are you doing just, you know, wasting your time hiding in the library? And a number of these people were also illiterate, so maybe they didn't understand the inherent value or use of books. So the people who were running the library invited them and said, you know, come see what we're doing. And yeah, when people saw for themselves what the library was all about, usually they changed their opinion. Moving forward to August of 2016, Daraya had now been under siege for 4 years, and the rebels that held the town reached a peace deal, and the government said, okay, you have 2 days to evacuate, and you can go to two places. You can either go to Idlib province, which is held by rebels and therefore is regularly bombed, or you can go to Kisweh, which is held by the government, which is relatively safe, but if you want to do that, you need to sign a formal statement renouncing any, you know, quote-unquote terrorist activities that have been going on in Daraya. And perhaps unsurprisingly, a number of the people from Daraya and involved with the secret library chose to go to Idlib province. So people said that it was very difficult to pack because they could just take a limited number of bags, and how do you pack up your whole life? A number of people said that they destroyed some valuable possessions because they knew the town would be looted, and they said, you know, we would rather destroy these things than have them in the hands of the government. Some people wanted to take books but weren't able to. Some people tried, and that was a mistake. They were punished. One man talked about how before he left, he went to the cemetery to say goodbye to the people who he had known and who he had fought side by side with. And then some of the men who had helped set up the secret library tried to hide its entrance. So before they left, they piled rubble and sandbags over it, hoping that one day they could return and maybe, business could return back to normal, or maybe they could return the books back to their rightful owners. So when people moved to Idlib province, they overwhelmingly were really positively received. And that's because although there was a civil war going on, and although different people had different opinions about what the future of Syria should be, most people agreed that they were anti-government. So everyone had heard of Daraya and of the 4-year fight that the people from Daraya had put up. So they really welcomed them as heroes, and everyone was sort of fighting amongst themselves to welcome the refugees from Daraya and provide them with food, blankets, pots and pans. It also gave the refugees a sense of respect. So there were different parts of their new towns which were rebel controlled, but whenever they said, "I'm from Daraya," everyone said, "Okay, we respect what you've done, you're brave fighters," and they were able to move freely even in parts of the town that were relatively dangerous and controlled by different factions. Unfortunately, not everyone in Syria had the same idea of what the future of Syria should be. So while the people involved with the secret library really wanted democracy and progressive thinking and critical thinking, that's not what everyone wanted. Maybe people could agree that they didn't want the government, but some people wanted Sharia law or some kind of very strict religious government or religious teachings to take over and to rule the country. So what happened to the secret library? Well, in 2016, I'll double check. In 2016, CNN reported that the secret library had been found or rediscovered, and unfortunately it was looted by government forces. So some books were destroyed and some books were sold at the markets. And there's two reasons for this. So firstly, some of these books were banned books, so the government obviously would not allow them to continue existing. But also there was corruption, and so some people would have just sold the books on the market, just to make a quick dollar. And it is confirmed that these were books from the secret library, because remember, each book was given an identification number and each book said which home they had come from. So it's confirmed that the library had been looted, and when people who had set up the library found this out, they were obviously really disappointed, because there goes all their hard work. However, I would speculate that some of these books would be quite valuable now in the right hands, because now they're famous or infamous. They're a part of Syrian history. So that was the end of the secret library version 1. But there is a secret library version 2. And that is because the people who built the library still believe in the importance of books and knowledge, and that it's only through education and reading that a progressive society can be built. So some people pitched in and bought an old van and renovated it and turned it into a mobile library, because they said that although they did find some bookshops in Idlib province, they were quite expensive. And so they thought, okay, we're going to get this van and we'll buy what books we can, accept donations, and we're going to set up a mobile library, and we're going to try to bring the ideas of the secret library to as many people as we can. Separate from that, there was another man involved in setting up the secret library who is now married, and he and his wife both like to read, and they have like their own little book club going on, and they hope one day to open up their own bookshop. So that's the situation as it stands where Mike Thompson leaves off. The people of Daraya were quite optimistic about their future and quite hopeful. Unfortunately, Mike Thompson is a bit more pessimistic. He describes that each day the government is slowly regaining control of the country, and I don't think the government fought so hard to maintain the status quo just to change its mind and give up at the end. So yeah, uncertain future. There's both hope and pessimism there. So that concludes my book review of The Secret Library by Mike Thompson. If you are interested in purchasing it, I will leave links in the description section. If you have any thoughts or commentary, please go ahead and let me know. And yeah, please let me know if I am pronouncing Daraya correctly. That's it for today. Thank you for listening, and maybe I will see you next time.